time for another edition of Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have comedian Stuart B. Thompson. Make sure to check out his new special, Conditional Love. If you're listening to this podcast, go over to the website, youtube.com/paulfcomedy, and watch us. Also check out my website, paulfcomedy.com, for upcoming dates and details about my shows. Follow me on Instagram as well, and check out our sponsors. Hey gang, as some of you know, I used to be a practicing lawyer in Chicago. I no longer practice, but from time to time, I need a lawyer. And when I need a lawyer, I call my friend Scott Shapiro. Scott Shapiro has been practicing law for over 25 years in Chicago. He does it all, from workers' compensation to personal injury, employment issues, and even entertainment law and contract needs. If you need a lawyer, call my friend Scott. 312-648-8800. That's 312-648-8800. Or you can email him at scott@scottshapirolegal.com. Tell him I sent you. You're welcome. Welcome to Why Are You Awake? Paul Farahvar here, your host. This week we have a very hilarious comedian, Stuart B. Thompson. Hey, Stuart.
Good to see you, Paul. Thanks for having me, man.
You're welcome. You're so polite.
I'm trying to. I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like everyone's nicer to you when you're polite.
Really?
Yeah.
I feel like sometimes if you're too polite, people take advantage of you.
There is a way to run the risk of that. There is also, I think it's a matter of like balancing how to be nice to people, but also
Get closer to your mic. There you go.
It's about balancing being nice to people, but also figuring out where you need to draw that line with other people.
Where did you get this niceness from? Are you from the Midwest originally?
No, people in LA where I live, people think that all the time.
Yeah.
I've been assumed Mormon. I've been assumed married with several children. I've been assumed divorced. I've been assumed many things. But I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and my parents were just really... I mean, they are nice people themselves, but they were also really rigid about manners, and like that really mattered to them. And I think they just... I don't know if they saw me as like an extension of them, but I think they just wanted like their kids to be presentable.
Yeah. And how did that work out?
I think it worked out pretty well. I mean, I think every generation is sort of like a diluted version of past generations in terms of like sternness or like rigidity.
Yeah.
Did you ever see the show Mad Men?
I did not, but I know what it is.
Okay, so for anyone listening who has seen Mad Men, the main characters, Don Draper and Betty Draper, the first family of that show.
Advertising, yeah.
Yeah, that generation, those people that were going to work, wearing a suit, wearing a hat every day in
drinking
a big
at
city,
lunch.
Drinking at lunch, and likely getting physical with their children. That was my grandparents' generation. Okay. And I think they were really particular about manners and, how they presented themselves. And like everything was keeping up with the Joneses. And
right. It was all about appearances. But then when you were home alone with them, they just beat the fuck out of you.
Yeah. I luckily, I think, luckily that dissipated by the time my parents wanted to be parents. But I lucked out because, I know not everyone is so lucky. But I remember talking to my grandma who's passed, and I love my grandma, and she's taught me so many things. But I remember the most I learned about her from a single sentence was when she confided in me and saying that like her greatest fear was embarrassment.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa.
There's so many other fears.
Yeah. For me, it's like... like
sharks.
Yeah, being attacked by a tiger.
Especially in like San Francisco, there's so many things to be afraid of in that.
Yeah,
crime, stepping in shit that's on the streets everywhere, as we're being told all over the country.
Yeah, that's it. If you were to go to San Francisco, it's like maybe a couple blocks.
Yeah.
But
now, actually, I think that's where we met is in San Francisco.
Yeah, at the Punchline in San Francisco.
At the Punchline, yeah. Mike Malone, who I love, told me about your special. As soon as I walked into the Punchline, it was like some theme show that was going on.
It was the Sunday Showcase.
Sunday Showcase.
Yeah, they do it every Sunday. Locals and some people visiting from out of town. Okay,
yeah. So I saw you over there. I'm like, oh, this is the guy that everyone keeps telling me to check out. And then we had a good conversation, and that was that.
And I had heard you before, but before I had met you, I had heard you on Peter McGraw's podcast.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah. He told me about you as well.
Yeah,
the soloist.
Yeah, I loved I love
great.
I love that podcast, and like even though I'm in a relationship and I've been a monogamous guy for a long time, that podcast is specifically speaking to comedians.
Yeah. And then I watched some of your special. I didn't get to watch all of it, but I do remember parts of it. Learning about you growing up, it all made sense.
Yeah, thank you for watching, by the way.
Yeah. Of course.
Yeah.
I released one too. I know you didn't watch it. That's cool. Whatever, dude. Whatever, dude. I know it's all about appearances and shit. But one thing you described you playing trumpet.
Yes.
And a lot of your childhood. And so a lot of the questions I ask people, which is what were you like as a kid? And it does add up.
Yeah.
Like you were like a band kid in a way.
I was a band kid, but I was also playing soccer year round.
Yeah.
So every weekend I was traveling from like.
Were you good at soccer?
I was better than like a recreational player. And
okay.
I was
You were on the traveling team.
I was playing on traveling teams.
So that's good.
But I was not the best kid on any of those teams. And on some of those teams there would be 19 players on that team and I'd be the 19th man.
Okay. But you were still on the team.
Still on the team.
That's kind of like how I was. I was on. We had a state champion tennis team. But I was on the bench. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, but I was good enough to be on a team that won state every year.
Oh, cool.
But I never started.
Right.
So similar.
Yeah, and in my high school, we made the finals of our local regional playoffs, but we had never won it. We were like the Buffalo Bills of our. Of
I don't know what that's like because we kept winning.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I don't know if you see all the awards in the room, but you played the trumpet. Yeah. I played the cornet in 5th grade.
Oh, wow.
Which is a similar instrument.
Yeah, it's just wrapped a little differently.
Yeah, but like I still, I was like fourth chair. Mm-hmm. So I didn't stick with it, obviously. But I still, to this day, and I play music, I play guitar, I play bass. That's no big deal. But I still know the fingering on like I know D, A, G. I know all the fingering. That sounds weird, but for a cornet on like 2 songs that I memorized 35 years ago, whatever.
Wow.
It's still, the song was called Safari, and I still, wow. Mr. Guide was our teacher. He's probably dead now, but I still know I can still play it. So anytime I see a trumpet, I'm like, oh, I know how to play this one song.
I've thought about being the Satchmo of comedy more times than.
Oh yeah, he talked about the scatting too. That was pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean it was, and that I actually did. In the special I talk about convincing my high school band teacher to let me do a scat solo, and I did it. I remember the look that my dad had on his face after the concert, and my dad is. I love my dad. He's proud of me, and I'm proud of him in a lot of ways. But like. The way he looked at me was otherworldly.
Like, what are you doing? Didn't Grandma tell you anything about embarrassment? You just ruined it for her.
Yeah, pretty much. She was wise not to come to that concert. I played in the marching band in college, and those are the biggest crowds I've ever played for.
All this makes sense, yeah.
But we didn't have a marching band in high school. That was like a new feature that I had yet to explore. That college had to offer, and they played at my orientation. And being in a marching band is kind of like being in a cult.
Yeah,
I'm almost certain it's a socially acceptable cult.
Well, socially acceptable is I mean acceptable, but also made fun of.
Made fun of, but I mean it's the cops aren't involved most of the time. And
safe.
Yeah, it's safe, but I mean in terms of like the level of. Are we allowed to curse on this?
Yeah.
The level of fucking that happens.
Oh yeah, that's what I heard.
In a marching band, I mean, like the level of just debasement and not self-harm in like a worrisome way, but in terms of like imbibement and like drugs and because it's all student run and these people are so type A and so I've never met a more angry group of talented people.
Right.
And I'm in comedy.
Well, it's like it's in that movie American Pie where they talk about that. Like our drummer in one of my bands was on marching band, and we relentlessly teach them anytime. Yeah. If he was winning an argument, we'd be like, okay, well, you play drums in band. So, but he would talk about it, and he would say,
within that insular group of people, there's a cachet.
Yeah.
But I mean, my first serious girlfriend was in marching band all through college, and we had a wonderful time together. But it was, if I was a different type of person and I wanted to like be that sleep around kind of guy, or I had the confidence to do that kind of thing, it would have been a ripe opportunity.
Right. But you didn't take advantage of it.
No, I mean, I just
nerd. No, just kidding.
Even when presented with the opportunity to be cool, I've taken the road less traveled.
Was it because of the discipline, or you just didn't know?
I think part of it is a discipline thing, because I have always had something I needed to do the next day that I needed to be like 100% for, or I felt I needed to be 100% for. So in college, home games would be on Saturday, and our team was not very good, so we would be playing at noon.
What team was this?
University of California, Berkeley.
Right. Okay.
Go Bears to anyone who's listening out there, but which I know kind of carries in a nice way here in Chicago.
Yeah. Double meaning.
Yeah. But I would tutor kids on Sundays, because that was like a way for me to make some extra money. And my high school was very close to where I went to college, so I had this pool of students that I could, make some money off of, and I wanted that money, but I knew if I was going to tutor them, I had to be on my game.
Right.
And, after Sunday, it's the whole week of school, and then, Fridays, you got to get ready for game day. So like, you got to be,
you self-sabotaged in a way, so you wouldn't have too much fun. Because you're like, well, Sundays, I'm going to.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of, maybe I overprogram myself.
Yeah.
And I think about that from time to time, but I also know that like sometimes when people are busy enough, it seems like they can't get all those things done, but it's because all those things are stacked against each other, you can get it all done.
Sure.
And that's just how
I mean, how much did you have to be on if you were just tutoring?
I don't know.
Your brain, weren't you smarter than the kids?
Oh, I mean, ideally, yeah. I would say I was, but I mean, I just never. I feel a little self-conscious when I feel like I'm phoning it in.
Yeah,
and
I feel pride in your work,
and I feel like people can tell.
Yeah,
and I've never wanted people to lose trust in my ability to do the work, and that continues in comedy. There's only a handful of places where I feel like I can really phone it in and get away with it.
Sure,
and I would love that to be the case at more places, because everyone's like. Because I worked at a comedy club, and I'd see people come in and work on stuff because they had, they either felt they paid their dues, or we all believe they had.
Well, there's got to be if you have a home club, that's kind of where you work shit out, right? I mean, that's different than phoning it in, I think. If you're working on material, of course, I don't do that on a weekend show or whatever, right. But like Sunday at Laugh Factory last night, I was doing 90% new material.
That's nice.
It all worked, by the way. All of it.
It all smashed.
I have fucking evidence, so shut the fuck up. No.
Roll the clip.
Yeah, we got the clip here. A laugh every 32 seconds. That's the rule. But yeah, that's good that you have pride and you have self-awareness too, which is a good trait to have in comedy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it grows with time. I think if I were to look back at the level of self-awareness I had, those first 6 or 7 years, I don't know how much of it I would say is like up to the level I would expect of myself now.
You mean
like self-awareness?
Okay.
Like
okay.
You
can't. You don't know.
You don't know until you get there.
There's no way of knowing until you start doing it more, where you're like, oh, this is what's crushing. Yeah. When I thought it was crushing 5 years ago, no. and then it grows and grows. You're like, oh, no, but there's always a. Yeah, you want to hope that there's a growth.
Yeah. Yeah. And COVID aside, I feel like I've been able to witness that growth.
Yeah.
And I wish that for any comic.
Everybody. I mean, some of them. Come on.
I mean.
Between us girls.
Well, sometimes the growth is you realize it's not for you.
What do you mean?
You realize that the art form that you think is your calling because you were a fan of it or because it seemed cool, you realize there's something beyond it. And I don't want to, there's a lot of comedians. I feel like if we had universal health care, there'd be so many fewer comedians.
Okay.
Because some people I would see at open mics a long time ago, I think if they had a therapist to talk to
right.
and vent these feelings,
I didn't know where you're going with
they
this.
would have never signed up for that money.
They're just, yeah, I see what you're saying.
And we all would have been able to get up early.
I feel like, and I don't know about the San Francisco scene, but I have heard things that it's a very nourishing comedy scene.
Yes,
and in Chicago, I feel like it's almost too nourishing sometimes because you coddle bad behavior to the point where people don't know they're not going to get better because they're like, oh, everyone said I did okay. You don't have the chance to have that self-awareness.
So could an example be something along the lines of like everyone just being a little too friendly with the feedback?
Friendly with the feedback. Or
as audience members or fellow comedians?
Fellow comedians. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When did you start?
Like March 09.
Okay.
So I was in college and like, I was in the middle of realizing that the career path I was about to try to embark on was not going to happen because I was trying to study economics in school. I wanted to be like a financial advisor. And those classes were, while the information was great, the classes I was almost going to not pass. Did
you ever have a career before you did comedy, or you did comedy and then just got jobs?
It's more I did comedy and just got jobs, but my vision going into college was I'm going to be this financial person because that was just like the world I knew from where I grew up. Right. And no one in my family was in entertainment.
Let's go to college. In college, you were in the marching band. Were you other social? Was that basically your social life, or were you also doing other things?
That and a fraternity.
Okay. So you were in a fraternity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I joined both of those. The band was frattier than my fraternity, though.
Yeah.
By a
what
country
frat
mile.
Were you in?
It was a Sigma Phi Epsilon.
Oh, yeah.
Sig Ep.
It sounds like you kind of were like responsible, at least, where you were avoiding getting too fucked up.
Yeah, I mean, I was up late because I did want to be a part of things from time to time, and I've always had kind of a loner tendency from time to time, and so when I want to do something, it doesn't matter if other people don't want to go do it. I'll go.
Just go by yourself, like concerts and stuff.
Concerts. I mean, I'm not a big concert person. I can do maybe one a year, and it's got to be someone I really like. And my girlfriend loves concerts. Goes to music festivals, loves it. But she has people that she goes with for that, and I love that.
How do you not like concerts?
I don't like. It's a personal space thing.
Okay.
It's a personal space thing,
Fair.
and like. Even if I wanted to sit in the front or stand in the front, I know I'm a very tall person, and I know I'm going to be blocking someone's view. So I know me trying to get more enjoyment out of a concert is ruining someone else's night.
Oh wow, you're so self-aware and think thoughtful.
Well, I mean, I've been to concerts and I see people do that shit.
Yeah. I have my best friend is like 6'6", so like I'm like, let's go up front. He's like, I don't want to go up front.
Yeah, I mean, and.
Because of that reason.
Thankfully, standing in the back can allow me some of that space.
Yeah.
But
it's not your thing. You don't care about concerts. You don't like music or happiness. It's cool.
There's many arguments for me not being a fun person.
So what were the things that you do late at night that you would have to do sometimes by yourself? Like, what are the things that you do anyway that you couldn't find people to go with?
Well, in college, it was trying out open mics.
Okay.
And driving into San Francisco or taking the public transit into San Francisco into these like really seedy bars and strange cafes, and that were also a laundromat sometimes, and and I was not 21 yet, so some of the places it was a little bit of a liability where I kind of had to covertly go in and leave, and sometimes it was a gay bar where they're like,
you're fine.
Yeah, you can come in, honey.
Yeah.
And but I remember these places like the Blue Room and the Stud and the Brainwash where I first went up. Like, they sound like very gay San Francisco places. Yeah. I mean, the Brainwash was just a cafe, but those other two places were definitely gay bars, and it was a lot of like older gay men, and sometimes it would be like just beyond the light, whereas like it had like a lurking vibe. I don't think they meant to lurk, but it felt that way from my vantage point.
Fresh meat.
Yeah, and I was just like, I just want to tell these jokes.
Yeah.
I was 18 and they were all 28. So everyone was just like in a completely different stage of life.
Sure.
So I was just like trying to get in where I fit in, but I don't really feel like I fit in very well. And that's why I didn't stay in San Francisco very long. And when I had an opportunity to go to LA, I did. I do get bouts of insomnia from time to time. I get these bouts where I'm like, they happen more now, but I think I started getting them then, where I just be like, I just want to take a long walk through campus, or I can't go to bed.
What time are you talking about? Like, what time would that be? Or just all through the night?
Anytime after, I was usually able to get to bed by midnight in college, but there'd be some nights where I'd just be either out much later, or I would be staying at my girlfriend's, too often, and like she needed some space. And so I'd trek across campus, and I'd just be walking through the peaceful Berkeley campus. And I've heard people say that they don't feel quite as safe in the city of Berkeley, but like it's so familiar to me because I grew up in that part of the Bay Area that even if I'm hearing like, a homeless person who's dealing with schizophrenia, like shouting into the ether, like
that's home to you.
Yeah, it's almost like the birds in the jungle screaming like,
it's part of your.
Yeah, that's kind of what it felt like.
Anywhere you go, there's that beauty and calmness late at night. Anywhere.
Yeah, and a lot of comedy clubs are in the middle of a suburb. And they're in some sort of strip mall, and the hotel or the condo where they're putting you up is sometimes even more remote. So, if you do hear anything, it's almost more odd, and there is a piece to it. And I think some of the best sleep I get typically is if I'm in like a hotel room by myself.
Yeah, I do too. Sometimes I wake up and I'm on the road a lot lately. You wake up and it takes you a while to figure out where you are.
Yeah.
And that's kind of a good sleep, in my opinion.
Yeah, you're like, where
yeah. This weekend, I thought I was home, and I was like, well, God, I'm not even home yet.
Yeah, these aren't my sheets.
Yeah.
This is not my beautiful
this is
wife.
Much better. Yeah. Good call to the talking heads. So you said you had an opportunity to move to LA. What was that opportunity?
So before I moved, I had two opportunities to go for the summer. So once I kind of had this crisis
during college or
during
after?
college,
okay.
Once after 3 semesters of college trying to be an economics major, I realized it was clearly not going to happen, and I had this, crisis at 19, and you could call it a quarter life crisis. I hope I live longer than 76. Do
you though?
I
mean,
I would.
Quality of life goes pretty bad.
Yeah, not much longer, but like I would hope to live a little bit longer than that. I had this crisis, like, this is not going to happen, but I had tried stand-up in the midst of that. And, podcasts were starting to become more of a mainstream thing that you could listen to. I kept hearing people say, you should do what you love. But I was like, they're talking about somebody else. And then I was like, well, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I should give this a try. And, I always loved comedy, and I watched so much of it. So I kind of understood, like, I didn't understand the prep behind it, but I was like, let's maybe get a little more serious about this, and let me start to understand more about the business. And so I'd listen to these podcasts that would get little tidbits here and there, and I was able to find this internship at National Lampoon in the summer of like 2010. And National Lampoon was not really what it once was. It was more like a distribution office, but I got to write some funny content for their website and meet some people and be on Sunset Boulevard every day.
That's
and,
awesome.
And start to learn about other things happening in LA. Didn't do a lot of sets, but did a couple. And, some of them were, I realized later, were bringer shows. And because I didn't understand what that concept was, bringing people to get stage time. I went back to Berkeley with a little bit more knowledge. And I was like, okay, well, let me try doing more shows here in the Bay, and let me see if I can find a major that's more my style. And I found linguistics, which I eventually kind of realized was as close to an academic study of comedy as I could find at Cal.
Yeah.
Because on these podcasts, everyone kept saying, you got to go check out UCB. You got to go. You got to go check out the Upright Citizens Brigade. They're doing cool stuff there. And so I went back and took a sketch writing and an improv class and sublet someone's apartment by UCLA. And then I started to get to know LA more. I started to go to like more open mics, and then I got on the new talent night at the Comedy Store, and the talent coordinator there, Tommy, liked me.
Nice.
And thought that I would benefit from being around, but he just told me to hang around.
Be a door guy?
Not quite yet, but he said just come by, hang out, and every time I would go do mics elsewhere, I'd go say hi to him and meet other people at the club. And I was 21 then, so I was able to like freely hang out there without, because I'd hung out there the summer before once or twice, but it felt like I was trying to get in on the sly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a popular club then. So
yeah, that was when it was slow.
It was the tail end of the dark times there.
Yeah.
So like no one really cared that much. Now it'd be a bigger deal.
Right.
So I start integrating myself more into the LA scene, and I'm just getting to know a few people, but enough to feel like maybe there's a future here. People seem nice enough. I'm the town coordinator at this seemingly popular club, but is not very busy.
Yeah.
Seems interested in me, and I got up on that new talent night one other time, and I used to wear like a blazer. And like with a shirt tucked into jeans and like loafers. I looked like I got off my dad's yacht where they were planning the next Republican presidential campaign. Sure. Like I told Tommy that I had to go back to finish school, and I realized with all my credits, I had almost a year's worth of credits, so I was on track to graduate a semester early. And the linguistics major didn't have a lot of classes required, so I was on track to finish in the fall as opposed to the following spring. So I was like, hey, I'm thinking about moving to LA in January after I finish school. And he says, well, if you move here, we might have a job for you. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, I can tell your parents would probably like to hear that. I went back and I finished school, and I moved to LA a month after my last final. And I moved on a Saturday. I went by the Comedy Store and said hi to Tommy. He was like, "You're here. Come by on Monday." And they put me on the new talent night. So I'd been on twice before. They put me on 3 Mondays in a row.
Wow.
Which I'd never seen happen. But any comedy career is a mix of luck and preparation. No two people get the same opportunities or in the same order, and it can feel like people are ahead of you or behind you, or we're all just kind of floating, and little sweet treats kind of come our way.
Well, that's a huge one.
It was huge. And I don't know if I really understood the gravity of it then, but like it was nice to have a job, because on the 3rd Monday they hired me. I ended up working there for about 5 years, but I learned about, and this is what really made me a night owl, was working at the Comedy Store.
Right.
That whatever, little bits of
choice.
insomnia. Yeah, I was working there until 3 a.m. Or I wouldn't get out of there until 3 some days. But I would either work the back door or I'd work the OR, and occasionally I'd seat the main room. But the OR and the back door, the original room is what I'm talking about, is where the main paid regular showcases that would go from 9 until 2 a.m. would take place. It's a different comic, someone you've probably heard of, and then a bunch of people who've written for shows you've really enjoyed, or been in commercials you've loved, or do warm up for shows that you've loved. They're all going 15 minutes back to back. And so I would watch these shows, and I get to see great comics, and I get to meet other comics, some of them more desperate open micers, and some of them more established people, and some of them people who are just like trying to do the same thing I was doing. One amazing thing one of the first amazing things that happened late at night would be one of the last acts every night at the Comedy Store was this guy named Don Barris.
Oh, yeah.
You familiar with Don?
I am familiar with Don.
So for people who are not familiar with Don Barris is the warm-up act for Jimmy Kimmel Live. You might not see him on screen much, but if you go to a taping...
He's a legend.
He's a legend. He's an incredible improviser. He's incredible at crowd work. He's like a big kid in a lot of ways.
He sometimes shows up right before his set too, right? Like I remember when I was there last time, last time he was there.
At the club?
At the club. He just shows up, doesn't know what happened for the last hour and a half of shows, and still crushes.
Yeah. And
even if there's like 7 people there.
What I love about Don is he has this magnetism to him, like, because he's really, he would only go up at the end of the show. No one's following him,
so he could do whatever he wants.
Kind of, and he kind of had this agreement with the club at the time. I think it's adjusted a little bit since then, but at the time when I was there, if he was there and no one else was going up before him, he was on, and he would go on until they closed, and he would be talking to anywhere from 2 audience members to 20 in this room that was kind of sparsely filled now because people had left. People come and go. It's a long show.
So people that know, like the show, it's a long show. You get there when you get there. Sometimes people have been there since 8 or 9.
Yeah, they started at 9.
This is like 1 in the morning, 1:30.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, at earliest 12:45 is when he would go on. So like, if you had been there the whole night, you had seen the history of comedy take place over several hours. And so people would just be kind of in this fever dream by that point. And I think that allowed people to be a little bit more suggestible. Maybe they had a couple drinks in them. They're feeling a little loosey-goosey. But Don would play these little games with people, and he'd talk to people, and he'd have these things that, would be, really dynamic crowd work things. Some of the things he had turned into like well-constructed bits that you didn't realize until later. Oh, that was crafted. Mm-hmm. And he took a particular interest in me because I did not look like someone who typically worked the door there, because I looked like I had just finished college, and I did not look like kind of this. I don't want to speak ill of the door guys, but I mean, I think a lot more of the door guys had like more life smarts, more street smarts to them.
Rougher.
I had none of that.
You were the most white collar of the crew.
The most book smart, and the most recently coming from that world. So I just kind of stood out in this way that I had no control over. And he would bring me on stage if I was seating the room and ask me questions. He just took an interest, and he was like, what are you about, really? And he learned that the woman I was dating was my first serious girlfriend and the only person I had sex with at the time.
Wow. And
we had been dating for like over 4 years. And so like, so he started playing this game with me on stage where he would say, what would it be like to have sex with her right now? Like, picture she's lying there on the table, because there'd be this table around the edge of the stage. And I'm like, Don, I don't want to do this right now. He's like, no, come on. What's she doing? Is she lying on her back or on her stomach? And I'm like, on her back, Don. And so he'd kind of coax me into pantomiming what I would do to have sex with her. And I was like, are you sticking it right in, or are you going to use your fingers? And I'm like, I'd probably use my fingers, Don. And you can see I'm visibly upset and uncomfortable.
It's the show, yeah.
But what he taught me in this moment was how to be the straight man.
Yeah.
In a 2-person
That's
comedy
the show,
team.
right?
That was the show.
That place during that time, and I have a lot of friends who were regulars at that time, and they just talk about it. They talk about it in this magical sense, but then you forget that the store during that time was just
barely scraping by.
Like there was nobody there. Like
checks would bounce. Yeah, it was a magical time, and it's not there anymore. I've hung out 1 or 2 times late, and it's a little different because the store is, trying to make it's a heftier operation now.
Yeah,
and so they need to
they
close
got
things
so big
up
because of that. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it wasn't. I don't know if it was that specifically, but I mean, like,
I mean, the greatness of it, people found out.
Yeah, and I mean, they got their social media game up and running, and shows like Roast Battle and Better Comics kept coming through, and people started filming their specials there. I worked Ari Shaffir's special taping and Louis C.K.'s special tapings, before we knew other things about Louis, but like those are big deals at the time,
right?
And like those 2 specials and Gerard Carmichael's special all filmed in the same year in 2014. That confluence of all those events
plus all the podcasts that talked about the place. Joe Rogan and all his crew brought all those people. Mark Maron, yeah, all that stuff. So those are obviously great examples of why being up late can benefit someone.
Yeah, I mean, we have specific careers where being up late can be really beneficial.
So what are the times where you're like, fuck, I wish I was home. I should not be here right now. Like, have you been in situations where like, this is why it's not good to be up late?
There was a contingent of people that even after our wee hours fun.
You're talking about back. Okay.
Yeah. In that 2012 to 2014 time. And even a little beyond that to 2015, 2016. That was the time I worked there. There would be these guys that would go to an after hours like card game kind of situation, and it was I knew it. It was referred to as Thai Angel. It was just this place nebulously in East Hollywood, Thai town, Little Armenia, where these people would go and do gambling and do after hour stuff and probably lots of other drugs. And people would not get home until like well after 10 in the morning the next day. And I knew that was not something I could see myself being a part of.
But you did it a few times to realize
it. No, I mean, I as much as I want to take risks in certain elements, like that was something I knew I couldn't.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have. It would have been massively uncomfortable for me.
Has there been other times where, like, whether it's high school or college, where you got in trouble or you did something and you're like, I should have been home? Like, has there been something that you've had a regret for being up late?
I remember getting invited to one high school party.
Your one and only high school party?
One and only high school party. It was, I remember her name was Jane, and her father was an marijuana legalization activist.
Okay.
And like a popular one. So she was in the Bay Area. She was the coolest person on the planet. And she was really sweet, and she was very kind to invite me, among other people, to her 15th birthday party, which was at her house. And when I went, it was a lot of people smoking pot and drinking. And my high school had a huge underage drinking problem. I didn't get invited to a lot of parties. I was,
Oh, you're like, don't you know I fucking played trombone?
Yeah.
Twice?
Yeah. Yeah. I play first trumpet, guys.
Yeah. I had to teach myself.
I'm left back on the high school JV soccer team.
Yeah. It's so weird you weren't invited. No.
Yeah.
So you get there.
But I got there and I immediately felt out of place.
Yeah.
And I walked home.
Ah, that's sad.
I was there for 20 minutes and I just knew this was I'm not going to enjoy this. I am not emotionally ready for this. Even now, I'm not great at a party.
Yeah.
I'm good at this. I'm good at one-on-one, and I'm good at 1 on 1,000. Everything in between doesn't work. I am visibly worse.
Well, that's 85 to 90% of comedians. I feel like we're better one-on-one, or we can talk to a crowd, but we can't talk I'm better at it because I have that ability a little bit, but at some points at any night you're like, this is so awkward. I got to get the hell out of here.
Yeah, I mean there've been some like industry parties that I've found myself at where I'm just like, what is this?
Why am I here?
Yeah, it's like for some reason, like you go and like none of the people seem interesting to talk to, and it's like it has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with like my own neuroses. But if I can get it to the point where like I'm just talking to someone one-on-one and like just turn the party into a series of those interactions, I can get by.
And you can do that.
Yeah, and I try to. But man, it sometimes it is really tough. And that's when I feel my least comfortable, least in my element, right. And the most like I want to be home right now.
What's your schedule like now? Because you're not working at the store anymore.
Right. I still have, I feel like in some ways I'm still weaning off of like being up that late.
Yeah, it takes a while.
And I've changed my habits a little bit to kind of try to limit how late I'm up, because there are more things now that I need to do that are in the morning. Because before, it didn't matter really when I got up. As long as I started doing stuff at 2 p.m., I was fine. But now, more things, I have different responsibilities. And
like what?
Well, I live with my partner now, so and she is a bright and early kind of person. And sometimes I got to be up early to we have tandem spots. I got to move a car, and so by 8:30.
You can go right back to sleep.
Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to get back to sleep. I have a cat now that wants my attention, and the cat is zero chill in the morning.
So when do you go to bed nowadays?
Lately, it's between 11 and 1.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not.
It's more reasonable.
Yeah, but I do. But if I'm looking at my phone, it's game over.
Yeah,
I will be up until 5 a.m. Because the phone is tantalizing.
Yeah.
And the blue light, wakes me back up. I get through a bout of sleepiness and I'm back at it, and then I'm a zombie the next day.
These are all problems we all have.
But it's not even just the reels or the TikTok videos. It is also the there's things I want to catch up on. I was thinking, hobbies that I want to be caught up on. Like I watch a lot of soccer. I love soccer, and they're playing essentially year round. So there's always games to be watching.
And the games are at night too. Like I remember being on the road somewhere, and then all of a sudden I see this light dimmering, and people are cheering when it's like 3 a.m. I'm like, what's going on? They're like, oh, we're watching soccer. I was like,
World Cup.
Yeah,
it's in Korea right now.
Right, and it's a small town. They open the bar just for these people to watch. I just went there. I'm like, are you serving food? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm coming in.
Yeah, why not?
I just put my headphones on, didn't listen to anything that was happening.
Yeah,
I hate soccer, so.
But I'll also get caught up in maps. Like I love looking at a map. Like that's the thing that keeps me up. I'll look at my phone and I'll just you ever like make like track figure out like a route for a tour that's never going to happen?
No, and I'm really bad at geography to the point that this weekend I didn't know I was going east and west. Like I need to look at maps more when I'm booking shows. Okay. Yeah, because like for example, I didn't realize Chattanooga was right next to Atlanta as opposed to Nashville, and so I could have just flown into Atlanta instead of driven to Chattanooga for 9 hours. So things like that, if I just looked at a fucking map once, I would have been able to resolve. Or if something's in Michigan, now I know better, but I book shows where I'm like, yeah, I'll do it, and then you realize it's all the way at the top, but you're looking at them for fun, which is
I'm looking at them like I've planned I've planned so many tours. Like these are all the cities I could hit just on Highway 10.
Yeah,
these are the ones that are on Highway 40. These are the ones on Highway 80 because there's these roads that take us across. This is where the autism really starts to layer in.
Yeah,
but like I'm not saying I have it, but like
we're all on the spectrum.
Yeah, if I was on the spectrum and I'm moving the needle.
I've kept you longer than I anticipated. Where can people find out more about your upcoming stuff and see your special as well?
Yeah, so my special is called Conditional Love. It's on YouTube. It's totally free. I'd love for you to see it. Everything about me can be found at my website. It's stuartbthompsoncomedy.com, and my handles on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, Threads. It's all Stuart B. Thompson, Stuart.
We'll have it over here.
Perfect.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you, Paul.
For doing the podcast. Good catching up with you again.
So glad to be here.
And thank you all for watching or listening to another edition of Why Are You Awake? Now you can go to sleep.